This video isn't sponsored, but it is supported by those of you who buy my presets, my LUTs, or support me over on Patreon. All of those things make the ability to do these YouTube videos happen, so thank you all for being a part of that. Hey everyone, my name is Ben Chaish, and today we are taking a look at the new TTArtisan APO-M 35mm f2 spherical lens. Now this lens was provided to me for the sake of the review. If you'd like to purchase your own, I have a link in the description down below that would help support the channel. But no one is going to see this video before I post it, and all of the thoughts are my own. So here we go. Now right off the bat, this is a really good lens, and the very, very obvious downside to me about this lens, at least, is its size. For a 35mm on a LEICA M camera, it is enormous. Like, there's just no other way about it. You've probably heard me talk, if you've listened to me talk about 35mm lenses, that this is my Zeiss 35 Distagon f1.4. And while I love the look of this lens, I never actually put it on a camera to take out to do anything personal with. It basically only comes out when I am using it for a shoot or for weddings or something like that, because it is just like, it sort of defeats the purpose of a LEICA M camera, for me at least. Beautiful rendering, all that kind of stuff, but it's enormous. Now, for the sake of a fair comparison, here is the 35 APO from TTArtisan next to the 35 Distagon 1.4 from Zeiss. And it's clear on the same camera that the TTArtisan is significantly bigger. And you would think maybe, okay, well, we'll just take the lens hood off and that'll cut down on the size. But no, the lens hood doesn't really extend maybe just millimeters further than the actual, lens barrel itself. So right off the bat, if you were looking for a lens that is going to complement a LEICA M in the way that many of us use it to like walk around or something in, something like this Voigtlander 35 f2, is probably going to be your better bet. But I'll jump in and talk about what I did really love about this lens and its image quality, and why you actually might want to pick something like this up over something smaller like this Voigtlander, or even something like the Zeiss. Now, like most lenses, this 35mm from TTArtisan came uncalibrated. I often just put them on my camera anyway to test. Many people say that theirs have come calibrated. That has never been the case for me, unfortunately. It didn't take much, but it is just a fact of life that you need to set up this thing on like a tripod or something and calibrate the lens. It took maybe 2 or 3 times for me to take some photos, change it back and forth and back and forth. Honestly, not that big a deal if you have a digital M, but if you don't have access to a digital M, I wouldn't recommend this for, a film camera. Now, in terms of build, this feels very reminiscent in terms of feel and build and all that kind of stuff to the 50mm f1.4 that I've used from TTArtisan as well. So well made, well styled, fits the bill in all cases there. It's just pretty big, but the focus is dampened well. It has a great focusing tab. The aperture clicks are nice and clicky. And everything about all of that kind of stuff just kind of says premium to me. The other thing I know a lot of people are going to ask about is going to be how much of the viewfinder is blocked with this. I'll do probably something on my phone or whatnot, but while you are as close focus as possible, the corner of the lens hood here does go into the center patch, which is not ideal, but from right here, it's just barely off the edge if I'm focusing on the camera. And then this thing kind of like the rangefinder itself adjusts for parallax a little bit. And so as you move further away, you get less of it in the viewfinder as the, patch moves up. But that being said, if you're someone that is really interested in seeing most of the frame in this, corner down here, again, another lens for you, but it is what it is. Now I did some test shots as well as actually adapted this onto my Sony FX3 just to kind of like take it around and play with it and have an idea of what the rendering looks like, how sharp it is, all that kind of stuff. And I was definitely completely surprised and convinced that this was good enough for a professional lens at a professional shoot. So as a wedding photographer, I had a wedding this weekend. So I decided to toss this 35mm onto one of my M10s that usually sports a 28mm Summicron. Now in that particular role, I think this is where that lens makes a ton of sense. Now all that to say, it doesn't really matter whether it feels good or, you know, it's a low price or anything like that. The only thing that really matters, to me at least, is how the images come out. So let's jump in, look at some images, and then I'll give my general thoughts about how it performs. So as you can see, I ended up using this again at a full wedding day, used it for landscape stuff, for close-up stuff, for, you know, just documentary things, all sorts of stuff. And it's super sharp. It does a really good job wide open at f2. It also lives up to the whole apochromatic thing. I never really noticed any color fringing at all. Even at, you know, really harsh areas like trees and things like that, wide open, backlit, kind of the area that is always going to be an issue. Didn't see that at all. So huge kudos to TTArtisan for making such a well-made lens in that aspect. And in terms of the other parts of image quality, the bokeh is very kind of standard. Like it just is uniform. I think people would say clinical, which again isn't a bad thing. You don't get any of that kind of cat's eye stuff. It's pretty uniform across the frame. And speaking of uniform across the frame, even wide open, this thing doesn't really vignette much. So if you're looking for something that just does a really good job across the board and you don't need any character, again, that's a pretty good setup.
I'd almost forgotten to take it out on the GFX to make some samples as well. This is on the 44x33 GFX sensor. You can see in the corners where it starts to get kind of swirly and stuff, and it starts to vignette and whatnot. But honestly, performs super, super well on that. You definitely get that curvy kind of bokeh in the corners, as well as some distortion. So it's definitely not perfect, as it's clearly not made for this. But here is the lens at infinity, and then here it is at close focus, and you can see how it vignettes or really doesn't that much on both.
Now, I know a lot of people are going to give the, you have a Leica, just buy the Leica version. The Leica version is well out of my budget. And, you know, the whole, like, if you can afford to buy a Leica, you can afford to buy my Leica glass. That's not necessarily true. I might be able to afford to buy $5,000 worth of Leica stuff. And if I really want an M10, that really only leaves me a few $100s to play with after that. So if it was something that was going to be used for like a professional thing, That's kind of a weird thing. Like it's a very like standard lens that I don't think a lot of people would be mad about getting images out of. Like you're not going to get a lot of character, but it's just not something that I'm going to have an issue with. So at under $500, I think this is a great value if you can get around the fact that you need to both calibrate it and that you have to carry it in a much larger sense than you would another Leica lens. I would definitely support someone buying this as long as you're okay with those different factors. So thanks so much for watching. If you're interested, I have a link below that you can pick it up. That will help support the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment if you are interested in knowing more about this or about any other lenses. You know, feel free to toss in suggestions of what you might want to see next. And I will see you all on the next one.